Hi friends, neighbors, John your whiskey neighbor here, and I wanted to shoot this review on an older but blended Scotch to give my thoughts out there because suddenly it's become available in my market. So I imagine that, a few whiskey types might be thinking, is this worth a purchase or is it not? So today we're going to look at Dewars. It's a blended Scotch. This is their 21-year-old double aged for ultimate smoothness. Interesting name. We'll talk about the whiskey when we come back. Thanks for staying with me through the short opener there. As I said, you can tell it's kind of a half bottle. This is, it's a 21-year-old blended Scotch made by Dewars. I'll talk a bit about the aging process as I understand it. Why they chose to call it double, I'm not sure. And in a Canadian market, people will be thinking I'm ordering a coffee at Tim's. I want twice the sugar and twice the cream. But aside from that strange way of naming, I pretty much like everything there is around this bottle. I actually like it that it's a small bottle, right? It's 375 mils. Basically, it's a half a bottle of Scotch. I like the case it came in. It's actually really sturdy, like it's a solid case. And the bottle fit in there nicely. I'm not going to put it back in, but really fit in there nicely. Well-labeled small batch, 21 years old. And it even illustrates the aging process, which gave rise to that name, double. So, and in my market where this just came out, it's beyond affordable. 21-year-old blended Scotch, recognized distillery. I know it's a half bottle, but it sits on the shelf in my neck of the woods for $39 Canadian. That's about $29 American or something like that. So for 30 bucks American, this is a 21-year-old Scotch. I really could just stop talking, go have a Scotch, enjoy the afternoon, and I think you guys know where my recommendation is going to go. But let's talk a bit about the liquid itself. So first, a bit about the process. I haven't reviewed any Dewars on the channel before because I tend to be a bit more single malt or bourbon, Canadian, Irish kind of whiskey. I tend not to do a lot of blended whiskeys, blended Scotch in this case. So I don't think I've talked about. One of the things that Dewars is somewhat famous for is the concept of marrying their blends. So anyone who's going to make a blended whiskey of some kind starts with unblended materials, right? So Dewars has a number of single malt Scotches that they're purchasing that have been aged independently in casks. They also purchase a number of single grain whiskeys that are aged, sitting in casks. So they kind of start with, really, I've heard the number like 41. I mean, they have really a huge variety of depth, a library. And then in their regular blends, what they do is, they create the blend that they want and they put it back into oak casks to marry for some time, not a long time, but actually to be in oak, not just in a big blending vat. And then when they've rested in the oak, they've married, then they bottle them and ship them out the door. And that's often why when you see Dewars, it'll say double aged or like something like that. So the current master blender, who good, it's on here. I was going to say Stephanie, but I don't know enough about her work. But Stephanie McLeod is the current master blender at Dewars, and in kind of honoring the tradition of Dewars, wanted to do that, but with these older blends. They've released a box like this: 21-year-old, 27-year-old, and 35-year-old. I've only seen the 21 and the 27, but just this is going to help remind me. So what they've done, they've taken those single malts, as I said, and the single grains, but then they blended the grains together and rested, blended the malts together, rested. Then they blended, the grain and malts the way they wanted to. So now they've created the essential blend and rested, and then finished in a sherry cask. The 21 is, I believe, it's Oloroso. I want to say it's Oloroso casks. I'm sure. You know what? I'll put it down below, but I'm pretty sure. Yeah, good. Okay. I knew they're like the 21, that's this one, the 27, 35, they've all been in different sherry. I think the 35 is in PX, and the 27 is in a sherry that I'm not that familiar with, so I'm not going to get the name right now. But the 21 finished in Oloroso cask. So there is the, the blending, marrying, yeah, and then the final finishing in Oloroso cask. Kind of lost my way in that just a little bit. But I believe that's where they're getting sort of the double-double, because they've got the blend, marry going on. And they talk about 4-stage aging and then finishing in Oloroso cask. So I know it's interesting. It's bottled at 46% and, carrying a nice age stamp of 21 years. That's a lot kind of up front. Let's talk about some whiskey. So how does it smell? This is a very nice nose. If you like fruity, expressive noses, this is on that edge of flowery for me, but it's got lots of berry fruits, maybe raspberry. Yeah, a little bit of spicing in the nose for me already, but definitely that high sweetness, so maybe a little bit of honey going on in there. Not too much maltiness for me. Edge of chocolate. I gave this to someone in my family the other day and I said, what do you smell? And that was the first thing that they smelled. It's not the first thing that I get. Really, I do get that expressive floral berry note. But there is definitely some chocolate in the nose. I think if you like that type of nose, I'm not getting brininess. There's no peat in the nose for me, like nothing like that. So, it may not be what your favorite is, but if you like that kind of expressive berry floral nose, I think you'd be interested in the nose. Let's see how it tastes. Sláinte. Palate is also quite expressive. I actually get a little more of that chocolate, almost a hazelnut, toffee caramel. Shifts for me in the fruits. They were a bit lighter in the nose, like in the fruits. In the palate for me are darker. They run toward that prune, leathered, older fruits. So the nose, I think it's going to be very light that way, but the palate kind of goes in a little bit different direction for me. A fair amount of spicing going on here. Different baking spices, so a little bit of cinnamon. Some even pepper. Well, maybe not. Maybe that's wood spice. And then what are some other baking spices? I think I just said this the other day on another whiskey, so maybe that's my mind, but ginger, like a candied ginger. Not super strong ginger, but a little bit of ginger, cinnamon, a little bit of pepper, a little bit of allspice. And a palate that now I get some maltiness, but I also get vanillas. Wow, there's a lot going on in the palate. Finish anchors wood into the experience, and then that third whatever sip you're having, the wood starts to carry through, so you can have a little more wood. I know in Dewar's process, just from what I've read, they use a lot of older casks, used casks to do the marrying, and so I don't think you normally get a lot of wood. At least I don't typically characterize Dewar that way. But whatever casks they use, whatever Oloroso they finished in, I think must be fairly expressive. I also like it that it's at 46%, which I think really gives a lot of backbone to this expression. Because definitely some oak. Now there is a little bit of bitterness for me in the finish. A little bit of bitterness that kind of lingers, comes up, and then actually goes away again. So I don't know where I'm getting just a little strain of kind of bitter that runs through it. I want to try this one with water. I don't know how you are with your whiskey journey, but 46%, it can certainly handle a little bit of water if you'd like it. And I tend to recommend trying a bit of water on a blend. I find there's quite a complexity to this, and in many blends, that water can move it. Now, it might move it in a direction you don't like, but I tend to say it's probably going to move your experience. Really brought the nose down, which I'm sad for. Sometimes water, to me, opens up a nose. In fact, vast majority of time, even just a little bit of water, I think scientifically opens up the nose. Strange why this time. Well, maybe it's getting more at some of that spicing and the caramels, and maybe it just brought some of the fruit into the background a little bit. That's an odd experience. Well, it's still there, the fruit nature. Just struggling to catch it with the vibrancy that I had when I first poured it. Let's see how it tastes. That lengthened the palate out quite a bit. A lot of depth or difference now between the vanillas and sweetnesses. A little bit of malty. And then the spicing takes a little bit longer to express in the mouth. You know, I totally recommend putting water in blends. I don't like this one as much with water. I really surprised when I tried that. I thought, oh, I wonder what I'm going to find here. And your experience could totally vary from my experience. Definitely Johnny Walker's. I really like putting water on those, but I don't know. For this one, the nose shifted away from almost a surprise, and the palate doesn't have the density that I was actually quite enjoying without the water. It's still a good Scotch. So, you know, this is an absolute steal in my area. Now, I don't know what it's going to cost in your area, so it's not an immediate buy if it's high priced. For me, a 21-year-old, 46%, beautiful presentation for $39 Canadian is an absolute buy. It's if you like Scotch in any way, or even thinking about liking Scotch, you need to go buy it. This placed second in 2019 Whiskey Advocate's Whiskey of the Year. So beyond my personal experience, people way more experienced in whiskey and in judging whiskey, blind tasting, 94 points in Whiskey Advocate, second their pick in 2019. So I think there's enough cred to say this is some pretty damn nice Scotch. And I like it. Grain whiskeys for me take more time to open up. So the fact that this is in that 20 plus year range, I think has benefited grain. And it comes into its own, in my opinion, a little older. I think some of the pure barleys can kind of be more interesting a bit younger, but I heartily recommend this Scotch. I'm glad I found it. After opening this bottle, I may have already gone back and bought another bottle. Well, no, not may. I did, because it's only a half bottle anyways. And I wanted to let people in the Edmonton area. It's Olympia Liquor. And they have the 27-year-old. I haven't bought it because it's more money. And I don't know. I think this gave me a pretty good idea of the flavor profile, and I like it. But they still have a number of these boxed bottles going for that great price. So if you're in the Edmonton area, I really, hard to recommend it high enough. Critically, it's probably about 4.5 stars. It's great value. I think it's an expressive, interesting Scotch. The Knox for me, a little bit of astringency, somewhere in that early finish, it does fade. And the other thing is, I might argue it's a little off balance between the nose and the palate. That's an odd one for me to talk about, but I just found the nose, so light fruit, heathery, flowery almost. It settles in. And then the palate was lovely and spicy and that kind of thing. And it felt a little bit like it was trying to be everything for everybody. Having said that, it's a little bit everything for everybody. So maybe I just talked myself into a strength instead of a weakness. 4.5 stars, perfectly happy with that strong mark for me. Perfectly happy recommending this. Hope you guys have something interesting this week to think about and share. And thanks for joining me on this review of Dewars 21. Cheers.